Everybody, welcome to 201st for today, October the 31st, 2022. Happy Halloween if you're celebrating. If you are not, I hope you dressed up normally. I'm Ryan Ballinger. Good to have you here with us. We are presented by our friends at French Lick Resort in French Lick, Indiana. We have two stories, topics to talk about, as the name of the show implies. Hope you had a great weekend. We had a great weekend here in the D.C. area. First of all, soccer season concluded. Great season for the kids. They're a great team. But second of all, the big news is Golf News Net Radio is here and real. It's very exciting. Everything got certified by our ad partners, and then we put everything live on the website on a test page basically on Friday, and let people know through Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter at Ryan Ballinger, you can see the link to it. We're getting everything squared away with our friends at iHeart, getting stuff set up with that. We have everything squared away on TuneIn now, so you can listen to Golf News Net Radio on TuneIn. Whether that's on their website or your mobile device or through a smart speaker. You could say, Alexa, play Golf News Net Radio on TuneIn. You'll be able to listen to it. So we'll have kind of rolling out bit by bit more audio each and every day. But really this week we're going to do kind of 4 to 6 hours of new stuff per day, get everything working right, and give people kind of a taste of what's going to be coming. Then in November I'm going to start doing my show, which will be called The Breakfast Ball, kind of like The Breakfast Ball, but my name's Ballinger, kind of like Colbert Report. We'll explain all that on the show. But we'll be doing that each day, weekday from 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern. And then as we kind of expand over the course of November, we'll start adding a couple more live shows with some experimentation. Obviously, we're getting to the point of the year now where there really isn't a whole lot of interest in golf. But that's also a great time for us to figure out everything that we didn't need to know about operating the station, getting all the kind of background stuff that needs to be put together, and be ready for you completely in January with a lineup that includes 5 live hours of shows each day, each weekday, and 5 additional hours of fresh content each day. So you'll have between 10 and 12 hours of fresh content every single day on the station, and then on the weekends, same will be true. The programming mix will be a little bit more different, but it'll still be true as well. So that's going to be the first probably 6 months of the station. And then from there, we'll continue to expand based on what the data and scheduling tells us. I'm really excited about all of this, as you can probably imagine. And we're going to do broadcasts live from tournaments. We're going to go visit tournaments and resorts and see equipment manufacturers and go do stuff on site, which is kind of the cool power of the station. And like I said, you'll be able to access it all through TuneIn, but also our primary partner is iHeart. You'll be able to access everything through iHeart's mobile apps, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all your smart speakers, their website, our website. There won't be a way you can't get a hold of this. And we'll have a player on every page of Golf News Net's website. Won't autoplay. You can choose to play it, but we're very excited about all of that coming your way very, very soon. So look for more on that front. Okay, today we have to talk about LIV, and we have to talk about the team championship that concluded on Sunday at Trump Doral in Florida, and really kind of recap what has happened and where this thing is going with LIV going into 2023. So the golf piece of it, Dustin Johnson's team, called the Four Aces, won. They changed the format from Friday and Saturday, which was 3 match play contests between a team, 2 singles matches, and an alternate shot match. And then on Sunday, they got it down to 4 teams. They wiped that out, and they went to stroke play, where every player's score counted toward the team total. The team with the lowest total won. And Dustin Johnson's team shot 7 under, 281. They beat Cam Smith's team, which is called Punch, by 1 stroke. Cam Smith played a really good round of golf, shot 65, and the rest of his team was 1 over. And then Dustin Johnson, I think, shot 2 under in the end. I think 3 guys shot 2 under, including Pat Perez, worst golfer on the tour maybe, and wound up shooting a pretty decent round in some difficult scoring conditions. But anyway, they wound up winning. The other 2 teams were Smash, which is Brooks Koepka's team, and Stinger, which is the South African team. I think Louis Oosthuizen's the captain of that, but don't hold me to that. and they finished third and fourth. So the four aces team won $4 million each, and Pat Perez's wife, Ashley, was straight up bawling on camera. I think for Perez and his wife, this has been a huge windfall, right? I mean, he hasn't played good golf, and he's made something like $9 million. And I don't know if that's a draw on the money that he got from his contract or what. It doesn't sound like it was. So for him, this has been a huge financial windfall. It's also probably been a reputational disaster for him. So you've got the golf piece of it, and that concluded. And frankly, there wasn't a whole lot of interest. There also wasn't a whole lot of interest in the Bermuda Championship, by the way, the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. I mean, it barely registered in the world, not much less in the golf world, in the world. And there weren't many people watching that tournament. We'll get to that, but this is really not, it's not a fire starter kind of thing for LIV to have 72,000 people worldwide on YouTube at its peak watching this thing. So you've got the primary audiences for LIV are on YouTube are really the United States and the United Kingdom. Other countries, I think Canada has a partner that just takes the feed and broadcasts it, and there are other countries. So you have to think about this primarily as the audience in the United States and the United Kingdom, which they're both crazy golf countries, the two most popular really for golf, at least English speaking. So you're not getting a whole lot of viewership out of that. Let's just be realistic. The viewership on Friday and Saturday was not good at all. I mean, you were looking at anywhere from 27 to 30 or 35,000, I think. Someone may have told me, if I may be messing up my days, but one of the days there might have been a peak of 40. Named Robo PZ, who's on Twitter, he keeps track, almost obsessive track of the audience numbers, and saw a lot of kind of random spikes and valleys of the numbers on Friday and Saturday to suggest that maybe there was a lot of bot traffic keeping up the number of viewers. I don't know. I think that's absolutely possible. All that to say, 72,000 people watching anything at its peak is awful. It is objectively terrible if you have spent billions of dollars to... What do you get out of it? What is the impact of LIV? And I don't know really cultural standpoint, whether that's golf, sports, whatever, that there's much of a blip on the radar for the couple of $1 billion that the Saudis have spent on acquiring players and purses and running a functional company that has something like 100 employees. There's just really not a whole lot to say for it. They probably have, roughly estimating, 100,000 people is my guess, come to the 8 tournaments between all of them. I mean, there were none in Saudi Arabia, basically. There were a few in Thailand. The American events seemed to be pretty okay. I think there were decent crowds there. And the one in the United Kingdom, to start it off, seemed okay-ish. So let's call it 100,000. It might be higher than that, but rough estimate. And those folks saw it. People who probably watched it out of curiosity saw it. But there was a very clear spike in popularity when Dustin Johnson won the playoff event. Was that Chicago? And then since then went down. And I think the curiosity factor of it has kind of come and gone. So the next step for LIV is to try to put on a second season. This is supposed to be their true originally really wanted to do, to have a 14 event schedule and an emphasis on the team component, really trying to get the teams to operate themselves and then I guess get income from sponsorships and merch sales and presumably actor, franchise owner type thing, and then I guess maybe some money from what they earn to fund the franchise, I guess. And that's going to be problematic for a bunch of different reasons. First is scheduling. So LIV has said they intend to have a schedule in 2023 that starts after the NFL season and concludes around this time of year. So you've got from February through the end of October as your schedule. Well, that takes out January, November, and December. That's about 14 weeks of the year. So you have 12 to, I don't know how many weeks are in every month. I'm sorry. But let's call it 13 weeks. So now you've gone to 39 weeks of the year in which you're operating. Well, they've also said they do not intend to conflict with the PGA Tour too much, but really the point is you've got the what quote unquote heritage events, which are the invitationals, the Tiger Invitational, Jack's Invitational, Arnie's Invitational. They're not going to conflict with those. They're not going to conflict with the four majors. I would imagine they're not going to try to conflict with the players. So let's call that 9 weeks. Now you suddenly have 30 weeks of the calendar to put on 14 events, which basically means these guys are going to play every other week somewhere in the globe, because there are supposed to be some international events based on the rumored schedule. You're going to play every other week for 30, basically. If you got into the major championships, you're going to play even more often than that, because then you're going to play each of those. So you've got 18 of them. So you're going to play 18 times in 39 weeks. You're going to play a lot. And I don't think that's going to be expecting when they signed up for less golf. They were thinking about playing 14 times relative to a 52-week schedule, because that's what the PGA Tour is, a 52-week schedule. With 50 tournaments, there's very rarely a week off. Some weeks you've got 2 with the opposite field events. You effectively have from the end of November through December off, and that's if you don't play the Hero or the PNC Championship, which has become increasingly popular among the top players. So for the context of what you're playing in the period in which you're playing, you're basically playing every other week for that meat of 9 months of the year. I don't know how that will ultimately be received by the players. But at the same time, even if they were to get world ranking points, that would still dock them, because they're probably not playing the 20 events you have to average per year on a rolling 2-year basis to not be docked with what's called the minimum divisor. So that would hurt their world ranking position even if they got the points. That's one thing. Then you've got, what's the future of the business of LIV? And maybe that's the second story. It's all kind of one thing together, really, in one episode, if we're being honest. But the business of LIV so far is a sunk loss, right? I mean, you've spent a couple, probably $1 billion acquiring players and spending on purses. And operating tournaments are not exactly cheap. You have to have contracts with venues. I'm sure they paid pretty good money to each of these venues. Escalante Golf had a couple. Obviously, Trump had several. And they're going to have to figure that out moving forward with other international venues. They're going to have to pay more venues. They're also going to pay for more tournaments. So you're going to have 13 tournaments, presumably at $25 million per tournament. That's not cheap, right? That's $325 million. Then you've got the $50 million event at the end, $375 million. That's before anything is done. You probably will acquire some more players. There are rumors out there. I don't know how true they are or unfounded they are, but they're going to sign some more players because they need 60 players under contract, because they need a backup player for each team, supposedly. And you're going to pay that player last place money if they don't play. That's part of the deal. So you're going to pay at least 12 players more than $1 million per event or per season to potentially do nothing. So this is a lot of money, right? You're already in next season for somewhere in the area of probably $600 million. Plus your sunk costs of the contracts that you already paid. You can amortize that over time. The Saudis have said this needs to be commercialized. This needs to be monetized. And this entire thing hinges around a television contract in the United States and presumably the United Kingdom. Obviously, the rights fees in the United Kingdom are quite different than the story here in the United States. Basically, you need to be in the American television market getting money to be a viable sports product in the long haul at that kind of level of money. There is none right now. The Saudis say they are working with several networks. They're quote-unquote clearing the time for what their schedule will look like. And all of that seems fair to say. They probably are talking or trying to talk to a couple of different networks. Big ones, maybe not. Maybe Fox on the Fox Sports 1 where they buy the time. But if they have to buy the time That's more money they have to put out to make the production, buy the time, sell the time. That now they're going to have to sell it with advertising, and it gets more difficult from there if they're paying for it. If they're getting paid for it, they're probably not going to get a ton, right? Because the viewership numbers just aren't there. You just can't pay out the wazoo for viewership numbers that aren't there for a league that's fairly new and relatively inconsistent. So you're not going to get a huge contract. The PGA Tour's rights deal is like $800 million a year. LIV's would probably be, I'm going to guess, 5 to 10% of that, if that's what they got. If that's what they got. So you're not going to recoup your costs really unless you're able to ramp that up dramatically over the length, the duration of a contract. And I would imagine, again, just guessing, I would imagine a contract from LIV related to rights deals, whether they're paying or whether they're getting rights fees, is not going to be a long-term deal. It's not going to be like the PGA Tour's deal, which is 9 years. It's going to be 3 because the Saudis sign something long-term in case they want to abandon the project, and the networks aren't going to want to sign something for long-term in case the Saudis abandon the project. So the risk of ruin there is got to be noted in the contract. So from a business perspective, I don't know that even a rights fee deal, even if it were paid all up front, would recoup the costs. So you have to have a television deal to set up what is going to potentially, in LIV's eyes, recoup the cost, which is selling these teams, ownership of these teams, as franchises that could then operate themselves. And LIV gets a big percentage of that fee from ownership of the franchise, right? Several players own something like a quarter stake, up to a quarter stake of their franchises, so they could sell it to a potential benefactor. They could make money that way. They could hold it and wait for the next sale, presumably, if there were to be one. But LIV's going to make money on the franchise sale. And then that's their hope, that they recoup their interest. Of course, they're not going to give up interest to the league. They'll still own that. So their hope is that they'll recoup the initial cost, the initial outlay, the multi-billion-dollar outlay, based on the sale of those franchises. But that doesn't happen without a legitimate television deal in the United States market, where they're making money. Otherwise, if you're paying to be on TV and paying for the franchise, you don't see the value proposition probably. So there's a lot that has to be figured out by LIV in the next few months. And if they don't figure it out, they're in deep trouble. They have to figure out how to get on television in the United States. If they do not, might as well just be done. If they have to pay for it, it puts them in an interesting position in terms of trying to justify the return on investment. But that doesn't mean the Saudis aren't willing to pay for it. Then you've got to figure out how to get to market this product to people in a way that generates more than a minuscule number of viewers, relatively speaking. And you have to find a way to do it quickly. Because having, let's say if they got on TV, they got something like 150,000 people on a Nielsen rating to watch. And that's double the existing audience worldwide from YouTube. It wouldn't be awful, but for the money, not very good. You're going to have to get in the 400,000 and 500,000 range to really make it worth it to advertisers who could take a huge reputational hit by advertising anything. Really. And you also have to figure out your relationships within the golf industry. Is the golf industry going to be okay working with LIV? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't pretend to, because all of the players that had their existing sponsorship deals largely do, not all of them, but largely do. They certainly do with equipment companies for the most part. But those deals aren't touted, so we don't know if the OEMs are going to walk away from these deals. Maybe they're going to try to pursue some kind of breach of contract. There are typically a minimum numbers of starts on the PGA Tour or your home tour that you have, namely the DP World Tour, that you have to make to earn the money to fulfill your contract. If you're not doing that, it could be breach, and they could just drop them. That might lead to legal action. But that's another thing. And then LIV's got to figure out whether or not this lawsuit that they've pursued with the PGA Tour is a benefit in the long haul, because they've proven they can exist. They have proven that they have the capital and the resources to bring in players and put on competitions. So from an antitrust lawsuit perspective, I'm not sure that they can get a whole lot out of this more at this point. If they were to win the lawsuit, I mean, I guess they recoup their legal costs and maybe some fees, but I don't know that that's going to be all that worth it in the end, especially if it drags on, and it's going to, at least a couple more years probably. So there are a lot more questions, I feel like, than answers for LIV. And we have more of an idea of what this product is like and what maybe the end goals are. And the golf itself is fine. I mean, it's definitely very top heavy. It's not a very deep roster. And if that doesn't improve, that's going to be a serious problem. But if you look at the effort to try to improve LIV's reputation in the golf market, with or without the Saudis, but however you want to view it, it looks difficult. And obviously Twitter is not real life, but reply after reply after reply that I see to players who play LIV and people who back LIV and the accounts that support LIV, it is overwhelmingly negative. I don't know how you change that quickly in enough time, if ever, to be able to make this worth it. I just don't understand. And there are a lot of factors that complicate this that could work or roll out in LIV's favor in the end. That's absolutely possible. But right now I don't see it. And so going into year 2, a lot more questions have to be answered, and really a few fundamental ones have to be answered. Otherwise this thing is not going to last very long. How do you get on TV in the United States and parenthetically Great Britain? How do you get sponsors or franchise buyers interested in purchasing the product? And how do you convince people who are vehemently opposed to it already to suddenly like it? If you can't answer all 3 of those questions, not just 1 or 2, you're in trouble. I don't know what's going to happen from here. Not pretending to know. Just trying to read what we have knowledge about right now. And we'll see what happens from there. But that's year 1 of LIV. That is the 2022 we lived as golf fans. We've got a PGA Tour event this week at Mayakoba. Victor Hovland is the 2-time defending champion, going for a three-peat. There aren't many people in the history of the PGA Tour have won an event 3 times in a row. Not named Tiger Woods. 2, basically. Other than that, this is an interesting kind of off, slow week with Mayakoba. We don't have a DP World Tour event. We have the Toto Japan Classic on the LPGA, but obviously given the time change in the United States, it's not going to land on a lot of people's radar, even though we have new world number 1 on the LPGA. Italia Tidikal is officially number 1, just over from Jin Young Ko. Lydia Ko has a chance to get there by the end of the year, but we'll see what happens with that too. We got a couple of domestic events to come on the schedule. But that's going to do it for us today on 2 Off the First. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the show. Again, we'll tell you more about Golf News Net Radio in the days to come as things get more online with the network. Very, very excited about all of that. And you can follow me at Ryan Ballingy on Twitter for updates on anything related to GNN Radio, or anything in the golf world. Would appreciate it. I'm Ryan Ballingy. We'll talk to you next time on 2 Off the First.